So there are 900 housing.
Recording in progress.
Sorry, I forgot.
Okay. There are 900 housing co-ops across the country in every province and territory. 2,300 housing cooperatives have been built with about 97,000 units of co-op housing. So right now, 250,000 people live in co-op housing across the country. Very, very popular out in BC. They've built a lot of new co-ops. So this, what's about co-op housing? So this is the bilingual slide. So the co-op housing operates not-for-profit housing to members. From the curb, the housing looks very same, not any different. And what's happening is different in how it operates on the inside. That's the difference in co-op housing. So a lot of advantages to being in co-ops. Members of the co-op have a vote in what happens in their co-op. They elect and are eligible to run to be part of the board of directors. They help set policy. They approve the budget. They approve the annual financial statements. They take part in education and training that's offered. They have common goals and a sense of pride in the home, and you get connected to a wider co-op movement. So not just cooperative housing, but through credit unions, the co-op stores. So it's a whole group that are all part of the same co-op movement. And these are the real advantages of living in a co-op, rather than just a regular apartment building or even in nonprofit housing. It's quite different. So what is this thing I'm calling,
Drew, can you get a chair?
a
No, it's okay. No, it's fine. I'm just.
so co-op. So the operating co-ops on a not-for-profit basis is obviously funded under co-ops, and they want to house members with mixed incomes. This is very important for these co-ops to be successful, and even nonprofit housing to be successful. They obviously the value to the community is very important to these groups. Where I was there, and they're committed to environmental sustainability, which is important. So. And your right to live in the co-op, and Larry will talk about, long-standing membership is protected as long as you respect the rules and that everybody's agreed on to govern the co-op. As I said before, it looks like all other forms of housing. So what is this new collaborative co-op, and why, what is it and how does it function? It's a relatively new thing that's going on. It's a new governance model. It was incorporated this year, the New Brunswick Nonprofit Housing Cooperative, and the goal is to try and grow the housing sector in New Brunswick through sustainable housing. So it works with partners to create new housing, developing new housing units by acquiring land, and that support long-term sustainability to help preserve and renew the existing affordable housing in New Brunswick. There's an opportunity perhaps to save some of those more affordable units, to use existing assets to leverage. So for example, many of the nonprofits in this province and in all provinces and co-ops as well, they've paid off their mortgage. They don't have any more debt. So they can use that land to finance and build more, or finance and buy more. So that's a really, there are billions of dollars in equity in these projects across the country. You want to maintain the housing, in perpetuity for affordability. So the mission here is to have, safe, inclusive, affordable housing for New Brunswickers in need. We want to be the leader in the development of this housing, and to work with collaboration, respect, and leadership. So there's a new board. There I am. So there is a new board, and when they created the co-op, they were looking for leaders in the nonprofit community to create a founding board. So this is to get the place thing coordinated, get it incorporated. What will happen over time is these board members will drop off as assets are built, and the board gets formed a bit different way. So Gary Glauser is there. He's been involved in nonprofit and housing forever. He was with CMHC. He was executive director of the New Brunswick Nonprofit Housing Association, member of the board of the Canadian Housing Renewal Association. Kit Hickey, Kit's based out of St. John, but she's executive director at Housing Alternatives. They manage a lot of housing, not just in St. John, but across the province. She's very, very knowledgeable. She's on the Housing Hub of New Brunswick Board. And Judy Lux, who's the treasurer, she's worked in housing for a very long time. Founding member of the New Brunswick Nonprofit Housing Association, Youth Transition, New Brunswick Housing Corporate. So she's been very involved. And then there's me. So I work at the city, as you know, it's on me at the start there, but I have a background in housing and both in at BC Housing, the province's housing agency in British Columbia, and at CMHC. So we're the founding board to try and get this up and running. So the sector-led co-ops are trying to support co-op housing. They have different governance methods, and we'll see how it works a little bit differently. So all around sustaining it, growing it, and can you scale up? So there are members, so the memberships, there are resident members and non-resident members on the board. That's a little bit different than in the past where generally only members were on the board. Now there's an opportunity to have both. Often if you want to bring in someone with expertise, maybe in finance, or you may want legal expertise, development expertise, and there may not be someone in the membership of the co-op that has that background. So there could be a combination, and the membership elects the board. But the operational structure is where it's a bit different. So there is a board of directors, but they hire services. So there'll be property management services rather than relying on members of the co-op to do some of these activities. So they'll be that will manage the assets, look after, so there'll probably be bookkeeping, perhaps someone looking after member services. There'll be a group to help grow the co-op and other co-ops, because it won't just be one. And then there's governance support. The thing with this kind of co-op is that as I say, it's not just one co-op. So it's designed to be an overarching board in the province, a co-op that would develop co-op housing in many locations. And there would just be the one board of directors across them all. Now, we have a lot of existing co-ops here in the province. They could join if they want, but they don't have to. They continue to operate independently if that's what people as the groups prefer. But there are a lot of very small co-ops in the province, some with 2 or 3 units. And so that becomes challenging over time, particularly as boards get older. And you're seeing that in the nonprofit sector quite a bit in some of the smaller communities who have very small, they may have 5 units or 10 units. They've been on the board for 40 years. They're done. And you don't want to lose that stock. So how do you go about doing that? So that's a bit this structure. It works, and it's working in Nova Scotia. So it's called Compass Nova Scotia. And so the same model was established there, a collaborative co-op, incorporated in 2016. And you can see on the right that they've been adding co-ops. So these are all existing co-ops from April 2016 to April 2022. 111 co-op units joined the collaborative from all sorts of sizes across the province. And the co-op has 3 new buildings under development. One in Halifax, and the other 2 are one in Shelburne and one in Digby. So the one in Halifax is quite big, it's 57 units. So when they're finished at the end of probably next year, they'll have almost 181 homes, and they have more and more co-ops coming forward. Again, it's completely voluntary if you wanted to join a collaborative co-op. Here in New Brunswick, I know they're looking at similar things in the nonprofit sector, the amalgamation work. So the idea is to develop new housing, new units in particular, to preserve existing, as we talked about, and use existing assets to leverage. And so there's some future plans going on. So the city of Fredericton signed a memorandum of understanding with the Co-op Housing Federation of Canada through the Atlantic division to search out and figure out how to bring co-op housing to the city. With our Housing Accelerator Fund programs, we provided funding to get the new co-op up and running, to help pay for the legal costs to get incorporated and all of that. And we've been reviewing with them available sites within the city. And there is a potential location for the first co-op up in the north part of Cliff Street, close to what's called Brown Boulevard. The plan would be, if it all comes to pass, would be to create up to 100 units of new co-op housing on this site. It's on a city-owned lot. They would use federal, provincial, and municipal funding to help get it going. They would have to get a mortgage because it's pretty expensive to build 100 units of housing. 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. Really important to see 3 bedroom units. We don't have units being built at that size. They would be fully accessible units and amenity spaces. So they're currently completing the due diligence on the land. They've done environmental work, they're doing geotechnical work, they're getting a preliminary design. They'll once they have that, they'll come to the city around we know which part of the land they'd like to be on. And then there'd be, how you transfer the land, at what cost, under what circumstances. It would be about 2 acres of land that they would be building on. And there's another 3.5 acres on the same site, which is up for sale, the land for development of housing as well. So it'll make quite a nice community up there, probably when it's done between 3 and 350 units of housing. So we're working hard with the co-op to try and get that to come to pass. Mayor Rogers in particular is very keen to bring co-op housing. And you may wonder why go up to 100 units of housing. Well, there's a new federal program that's out. Next slide there. CMHC's created a new program to help build more co-op housing in the province or the country. They might finance up to 100% of the cost. Some of it's in a loan, some of it's in what they call contribution, which means free money. 75% for non-residential. So if you want to put a daycare in there or commercial space, they would fund part of that. They'll let you convert from non-residential to residential under the program, but it has to be, they call it rental cooperative housing, which is kind of counterintuitive because you don't pay rent in a co-op, you pay a housing charge. If it's an equity co-op, you're not eligible. So equity co-ops, you actually pay in and actually own part of the unit. That's not eligible. Places like Fredericton, our size, you have to have a minimum of 75 units in order to build a new co-op under this program. So that's why you see that thing is up to almost 100. There's some very rigid energy efficiency requirements. 20% of the units have to be exceed accessibility standards. A 20-year commitment. Now, this is where it becomes interesting on the term what is affordable. It depends on who you ask, but this is a different model for CMHC because they're saying the housing charges have to be at or below 110% of the median market rent for units post 2000. So that's unusual. There are other programs you have to have housing charges or rents at 70 or 80% of market. So this is a bit unusual. The first round of funding, their application window is closed. The new co-op didn't make the application because they haven't finished enough work on the land. And with CMHC, when you apply for one of their programs, you have to be pretty much ready to go. And they're not at that stage yet. So that's the CMHC has this new program out there. There'll be another window for funding open up, we think, by spring next year. What did I not pop? Oh, I popped in this slide in there, so it's not.
Presuming that we don't have the federal election.
Well, yes, that would be true. But that's with a lot of the housing programs. We've heard in the news that Mr. Poilievre is not keen on continuing some of these housing programs that are in place, including this infrastructure program I mentioned, the Housing Accelerator Fund, for funds that have not yet been advanced, the potential that it could be canceled. But we're assuming it's all carrying on. We're not stopping. The developing a new co-op is it's just like developing any other kind of housing. It takes a long time. Working with a program funders is very, very complicated. And I had it up, yeah. So it is very complicated. It takes a lot of time. It'll take probably 3 years to build a co-op or any kind of housing project. By the time you get to financing in place, you do all the due diligence that has to be done.
And you find a builder.
Finding a builder can be a challenge. The good thing about the co-op movement is that they work with a company called New Commons Development, who helps build co-ops across the country. So they can have them come in and do all the upfront work with them, to do all their costing analysis, engage all the sub-consultants that are needed. And this co-op is working with New Commons. They're also able to provide, some upfront construction financing if needed. But, finding land and doing the due diligence on the land and, to get pre-construction financing here within the province, you can get pre-construction financing from the Regional Development Corporation. You can get pre-construction financing from CMHC through what's called seed funding. You can get some money from the city, but it's all each different agency. It can make it very complicated, which is why they're fortunate to have a consulting firm to help them get through all the peculiarities. This site is already zoned for what this use is, so that's very helpful. Because for a couple of things, one, it can go quicker, and two, you don't get the public hearing pushback on building certain types of rental housing or co-op housing. So that's very, very helpful in that way. But getting things approved is incredibly time consuming. This funding from CMHC is only a 4-year period. So if you've got to get it done by 2020, 2028, if you want to build something. And it's very overwhelming for new groups. So that's why partly the reason the collaborative co-op was created is that it's not each individual group that has to go and try and figure out how to build a co-op. You can go with this group if people like, or build their own, either one is fine. You have the expertise within the group who can help build the co-op in the community where it would make the most sense. So that is really one of the most critical parts of it and why it can help really well. There's a couple of things out there. So obviously at the Co-op Housing Federation of Canada, Robin McCallum, she is the coordinator there. There's a how-to guide on the CHF Canada site. It's quite straightforward. It explains all the steps along the way. And then the last one there is the CMHC program. But the how-to guide is helpful. It's a bit of a checklist. And then, if you're interested in thinking of a project, I think if we built 100-unit co-op in the city, that would probably be it for Fredericton for a while. That's a pretty big project. To put in context, the largest nonprofit project we think is coming soon is 24 units. So bigger projects have not been built in a long time. And so if we had one good co-op established here, I think that would do well, unless another opportunity presented itself. But they are looking to move around the province. So that's a bit of what collaborative co-ops are, but about how co-ops work. Larry can give you the real life example because he's on the board of the co-op that was built back in the heyday of federal housing money, right? I think that's what's you're in the 90s. That's what the heyday funding.
Well, in the mid-80s. I've asked Sandy to stay on that.
Yeah, I will. Just give me one
there
second.
when she gets it up. And I am cognizant of time. I will talk relatively quickly.
Well, I talked far too long. So
That's
No,
all
you
right.
didn't. You did a
You
great
did. That was
job. It's
good
only
information.
7.
I will talk.
And then you got 15 minutes and then
Yeah.
we'll open for questions.
Yeah, and nobody likes to listen to me drone too much, and I talk for a living, so I could potentially talk for the remaining time, but let's move on. So this is Pine Valley Co-op, nestled between Big Street and Forest Hill Road in here within the city. It has been home to me and to my family since 1995. It was established in 1983. And we are a fully member funded and managed organization. So we have a 9-member board of directors, which is completely from within the membership of Pine Valley. And our operating budget for this fiscal year of 2024-25 is just slightly north of $319,000. And within those 11 buildings there, we have 39 townhouse units. They're predominantly 3-bedroom units. 31 of them are 3 bedrooms. We have 6 4-bedroom units, and the remaining 2 are 2 bedrooms. And many of the things that that Janet's talked about here with how the management of the co-op, you made an allusion to the age of many boards. And one thing that we're proud of is that I am the 3rd oldest member of the 9-member board, and that the remaining members of the board are predominantly south of 40 years of age. So we are very fortunate. We do our own management. We hire contractors to do maintenance work, etc. But we have a bookkeeper who handles much of our books. We have people with business degrees who are able to facilitate and help in many of those things. And we lean heavily upon our lawyer. We lean heavily upon our accountant and upon the Amista Credit Union for additional support in management of the operation. Of that $319,000 operating budget, it all comes from membership. People kind of salivate when they hear the numbers that I'm going to tell you next.
Mhm.
A 3-unit townhouse in Pine Valley is $680 a month. And that's shockingly below average for a 3-bedroom anything, townhouse or apartment. It's important to bear in mind that because our mortgage was paid off in 2021, and we managed very carefully to ensure that we did not have to take on additional increases in our housing charges. We did, as Janet mentioned, members determine their budget, they determine their policies, and they determine how much they pay. So for the lifetime of our mortgage, $151,000 a year was our mortgage payment. And so we managed to a balanced budget as best as we could. There were years that, as with anything, sometimes you have to take a deficit and sometimes you take a tiny little bit of surplus. But we've managed very carefully in order to do that. But now that our mortgage was paid off in 2021, one good thing came from the pandemic. We paid off our mortgage. Now that that's paid off, that's freed us up so that we can reinvest back into our co-op and into our community. So within the last 6 to 7 years, we have done all brand new siding on all those buildings. We've replaced the roofing on every building. That's a shocking amount of money that we would not have been able to do. In addition to that, last year we replaced every appliance within the co-op: washer, dryer, refrigerator, and stove. And we didn't buy cheap ones either. We put good equipment in. So this has really given us an opportunity to reinvest. That picture doesn't show the new parking that we created over the last 3 years, because when the co-op was built, most people only had 1 vehicle. Now almost everyone has 2 vehicles. So we were very cramped, we were very tight. So we've been making additional investments into our infrastructure. And that's just part of what we've done. We have many more plans to do to continue on with that. We have pieces of the property that could be developed further, and we're exploring into those options with what we may be able to do and how we may be able to expand. But as you can imagine, anything that was built 30+ years ago needs work. So we have to take care of those aspects of it first. But I should have told you to go to the next slide. Sorry, my apologies.
Okay.
I wanted to stay there until I addressed the matter of money, because I knew if that was up on screen and people read to it, they would stop listening to everything that I said.
Mhm.
So the reason that we're able to maintain our housing charges at these affordable levels is because of the teamwork and the community that we have within the organization. If you pop to the next one. I realized as I was putting this short little slide deck together, we don't take enough pictures of what we do. So this summer, we constructed a new playground for the children that live in the co-op. And there are some of us they're working on the assembly, some demolition. I did not put the picture on there of me swinging the sledgehammer.
I was gonna say, you said us, but I don't see you anywhere. there.
I took those pictures.
Okay.
I took those pictures. And I did have one selfie of me with the sledgehammer, but I didn't think it was good to put on here. And then down below in the bottom right-hand corner, we had that's just outside the playground there. We had a pumpkin contest amongst the kids that were there. So we are working very, very hard to foster that good community, good neighbors. Well, our spring cleanup that we did this year, the number of people that we had out, I couldn't take any pictures then. I was running a chainsaw. So the cleaning up and doing the types of things that is important. We do as many things as possible ourselves so that we don't have to hire needlessly. I did see there is someone online there on Zoom who is a member of our co-op, and I know he has mowed much grass. He has mowed much grass this year, just so that we, as part of the team that was put together to handle lawn mowing, landscaping, etc. And that's a way that we save money, because we're in doing that ourselves. That saved us approximately $4,000 off of our operating budget, rather other than hiring a landscaping company to do that. So it takes some work, takes some teamwork, but it's all in all a very rewarding and a very community-based atmosphere to live in. As I said, I've been there since 1995. I've raised both of my children there. My oldest she's moved out, and she is also a member of the co-op and has her own unit. And I think it speaks very highly of the nature of our co-op and the nature of our community, that she is not the only kid who grew up in Pine Valley Co-op and is now a member. There are 3 kids who grew up who now call it home, outside of their parents' family, or outside of their parents' unit. And I think that speaks volumes to the nature of our community. And I think that
bad news about the waiting stuff.
Oh, the bad news about
Okay,
waiting,
let's just hang on a
we'll wait
second.
for that.
We're gonna open up some questions.
Okay.
But I want